800 subscribers!
So an enormous thank you to all of you new subscribers and to everyone who has supported my channel so far. It is absolutely amazing to be going up in the rankings, always higher and higher, more and more people joining, so keep on subscribing! I felt that it was necessary to put on an extra coat, but I did not feel that it was necessary to shave in order to bring you this message. Enjoy the video! Hello and welcome to another Zach Carnage video, and this time we are going to be taking a look in depth at both Immortals and Necron Deathmarks. So right, here's another tactics talk for you guys. We're going to be talking a little bit about the psychological tactics towards this. We're going to be talking largely about the statistical advantages of the different weapon types that you can use, all of the options that are available to you, and basically everything that can let you decide between the Immortals and the Deathmarks. So let's get this thing rolling. So really today we have three different units to basically look at. We have the Gauss Immortals, or the Gauss as I should be saying, having studied Gauss's work for well over a year now. Then of course we have the Tesla Immortals, and of course finally we have the Necron Deathmarks. So these are the three major options that we're going to be looking at today. I'd just like to mention that this entire topic was brought up by a comment from Steven Silver, who said in my Lichguard versus Praetorians video, which you can check out, there's a link for in the top corner right now. He said, why don't I do some more unit analysis, and it would be really useful for him because he's a new player to see some of the other units that are out there and, you know, what they can do, and some of the statistical analysis of what units are better at doing what. So today we're going to be looking at these guys, and let's go through some of the things which are common to both of the unit types. First of all, each squad can take 5 to 10 members. That's a pretty standard set. You're not going to be wanting to be taking larger squads because the current metagame really requires low squad units so that you can fire at the things you want to fire at. In my personal opinion, I would always rather have lower units, even though in the kill points game you lose out generally because of that. But then, because we're playing Necrons, a lot of our units are very, very survivable, so we don't really care about the kill point game so much. So you may as well just go for just the basic 5-person unit. Also, these guys have identical stat lines. I'm not going to go through them with the fear that GW will be hot on my tail, but basically all of these guys have the same generic stat lineup that you'd expect for Necrons, with the bonus of the 3+ armor saves. They're all benefiting from RP rolls, and they are all subject to the availability of this beautiful night side that I have here as a dedicated transport, so he can just sort of be in the top there, and you can just about see him on the camera. So they're all able to take the night side as the dedicated transport, which is very nice. Then in terms of options, the Immortals, Immortals have the Gauss blasters and the Tesla carbines, whereas the Deathmarks have literally 0 options. The range of abilities that they have is far greater. Apart from that, the Immortals have nothing special, whereas the Deathmarks have Deep Strike for starters. They're using synaptic disintegrators as opposed to any Gauss technology. They have the Hunters from Hyperspace Rule, Ethereal Interception, and basically what this grinds down to is that if they get hits on 6, they can be allocated. If they automatically wound on 4+ because of their weapons, they get AP2 wounds when they roll to hit to wound on a 6. Sorry. If they're arriving from Deep Strike, then they wound on 2+ for the rest of that turn with shooting attacks. And if you want, then they can arrive during the enemy turn, but then they can only attack units that have arrived from reserves in that turn. So basically they arrive in response to other units arriving, and that's how they can play. So let's get into some of the useful information that we've gathered here. Okay, so for starters we've got the Immortals. As I said, more survivable warriors basically with slightly better weaponry. They're a little bit heftier in price, but you know, it's generally that is pretty much worth it because they are very, very survivable thanks to the RP rolls. Plus you can put them into a Decurion, give them that boosted RP roll, so they're constantly going to be getting back up. These guys are very good at maintaining possession of an objective provided you take a larger squad, so like a squad of 10, whereas if you want them to go out and do some killing, just put them in 5s, or, you know, if you'd prefer a potentially more survival squad, is to have 2 lots of 5 Immortals just standing next to each other on an objective, absorbing shots. And hopefully, you know, your opponent isn't going to be too smart, because if they are smart, they'll just pick off 1 unit at a time, but then that doesn't actually free up the objective, because it will still take the same amount of time to get rid of the same number of characters. Now, there are a few points that we should make about the weapon choices. The Gauss blasters are really designed for taking on vehicles and for removing mobs with weaker armor, because they are AP4. So the generic Space Marine is going to be able to absorb those shots relatively easily thanks to power armor, whereas some weaker things like Fire Warriors aren't going to be able to deal with the shots so much, won't get any armor saves, and they'll really suffer from that sort of thing, as we'll see in the statistics section of this video. If you decide to go with the Tesla, you will get additional wounds by rolling 6s, and the ratios improve, you know, the better you roll, basically. However, the system isn't that consistent, and it really depends on what you're going after. Say you're going after Terminators with these guys, which I really wouldn't advise, but is still a possibility. Then the Tesla weapons will basically do exactly the same against Terminators as they would do against basic Space Marines. Obviously there's a slight reduction in the generic wounds, but you're getting additional hits from your arc shots as well. So that's one of the main points. So really, these guys are good defenders. They provide a lot of intimidation when you move them up the field. They're going to absorb a lot of shots because of that, because people will think that these are a rather hefty unit that needs to be eliminated because of the damage that they can do. But to be honest, they are not as effective as people think they are. A lot of people will psychologically associate a lot of pressure and fear on what the Immortals can do, when in actuality they are not as effective as most people seem to think. So really, you can use these as an intimidation device in the game, and other than that, they're just pretty basic, but they're very good at being basic guys. So there's really not a lot that you can say against them. They do a job rather efficiently, and they have no issues with it. So let's move on to the Deathmarks. So these guys are the Necron's equivalent of assassins, basically. Obviously, they're not quite as powerful as what the Grey Knights could muster back in the day. But these are still a relatively high-pressure unit. You know, a lot of people are going to associate a lot of problems with what Necron Deathmarks can do. They don't like the disruption that can be provided by the ethereal interception rules, so, you know, that's a major step. So basically, again, you know, standard setup with the usual stat line. Of course, they're using the snipers now. As we discussed, they're going to be wounding much more efficiently, and especially on the turn they arrive, because of their hunters from hyperspace, you'll get the wounding on 2+, which is absolutely fantastic. I have to say that the turn they arrive is really their most efficient one, and we'll do a little bit of discussion of that later as well. But because these are generally considered to be more of a sort of elite unit in the army, people will value these much higher than what they would value Immortals. Now, there's only a points difference between the two of them. I'm not going to say exactly what the points cost is, but these guys are just 1 more point than the Immortals, and depending on what you use them for, that could be really, really important to you. There are some things that they're better at, some things that they're worse at. Ideally, these are meant to be elite troops killers. They absolutely suck against vehicles, so really, you know, don't even bother with that stuff. But if you can pit these guys against some Terminators, preferably you want to be getting 10 Deathmarks going up against them, although you don't want to put them in units of 10 preferably, and they are much, much better on the turn they arrive than any other turn. However, please do not bring them in with ethereal interception. If you're thinking about the psychological warfare aspect, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic that they can come in on your opponent's turn, because suddenly your opponent has another unit to deal with, and they worry, and their tactics are sort of ruined. However, because it happens during the movement phase, that gives them a lot of time to recover. They still haven't fired off any shots, so they'll probably wipe out your unit almost immediately. And it really I don't see any major advantage to it, because instead of shooting against one unit, they'll then pick this unit instead and wipe it off, and then the next turn they'll be back to where they were before. Whereas if you're the one bringing them in on your turn, you can evaluate the situation much better. You can decide which thing is going to attack what. You can potentially take down a unit of elite troops very easily with a combination of these guys, and, you know, just a few backup shots, maybe from some Immortals or Warriors, or from whatever happens to be laying around, and that could relatively easily wipe out a solid elite unit otherwise. Okay, so we've had a bit of a look at some of the generic ideas that are associated with these two types of unit, but now let's get into the nitty-gritty numbers game. So, as you may have seen before, I like numbers, probably to do with my birthday being on Pi Day, but apart from that, let's actually get into this thing. So to start off, we're going to be looking at 5 Gauss Immortals, I'm going to keep saying it the wrong way, against Space Marines, and we're looking at the max effectiveness. So this is the unit with pumped up to its most power, and we're not going to be looking at lucky rolls, we're going to be looking at the consistent amount of rolls and the amount of wounds that you are likely to put onto your opponents. We're ignoring enemy unit size, cover, any special things. We're just saying straight off, shoot. Let's see how many wounds you would do. So to start off, let's use these Gauss blasters. So we're going to be in rapid fire range, which means that we get off 10 shots. We have a ballistic skill of 4. We're going up against a unit with toughness 4, but we have a strength of 5 on our weapons, so we get a lovely 4 out of 6 here. Much better than flares. And then Space Marines have a 3+ armor save, so 2 out of 6 of our shots will actually get through. That leads to 40 over 27, which is about 1.5 wounds. Now, if you're going against Terminators, they do have the 2+ armor save, so you go down from a 2 out of 6 to 1 out of 6, that just halves this, and brings us down to about 0.7 wounds against Terminators. But looking against Space Marines, this is a fairly reasonable amount of wounds to be doing. It does mean that you can wipe out an opposing squad within about 3 turns. You can certainly have them running away depending on what you're going against after a short while. So this is a fairly reasonable amount of wounds, just considering this is just a 5-person squad. So then moving on to Tesla, again we're saying we're in the same range, although it doesn't make any difference with these guns. So we will be firing off 5 shots, which again hit on 3s, wound on 3s, and then the standard armor save, leading to a 20 out of 27, which is about 0.7 wounds from the initial shots. Then of course we have the arc shots, so a quarter of this initial amount, which is the rolling at 6, leads to an arc shot, so there's an additional 2 shots from that, and that results in another 10 out of 7, or 0.4 more wounds. So you have a total of 1.1 wounds against Space Marines here. So looking at standard unit versus standard unit, this is significantly lower than the 1.5 wounds that you would expect using the Gauss. So I said, like, in this case, obviously the Gauss is better. And in fact, I often find that I would much prefer to play Gauss rather than Tesla. And here are a few more reasons to try and persuade you. Because the real use of Gauss is A, for vehicle wrecking, and B, for mob blasting. So in vehicle wrecking, again we're going to say within rapid fire range you get your 10 shots, you're hitting on 3s, and 1 out of 6 of your shots cause a glance. So we're saying we're going up against something with really tough armor, we're just going for glancing hits. That's 10 out of 9, it's about 1.1 hull points glanced away for every 5-person unit of Immortals. That's pretty decent, considering that you're not going to see much more than 3 or 4 hull points. Plus, keep in mind that if you're going up against something with a lower armor value, because these are strength 5 weapons, you may or may not be able to actually get penetrating hits with this anyway. So this is just going up against really tough armor, very high hull point, a very powerful vehicle, and you're still stripping away 1.1 hull points every turn with this unit. Then if you're going up against a mob, so essentially we're saying any unit which has an armor save which is worse than or equal to a 4-up. So a 4-up, a 5-up, a 6-up, or worse, they won't get any armor saves, leading to 10 shots hitting on 3s, and then you're wounding on 3s, let's say, so we'll assume that they're basically human, so 5v4 gives us a 4, and then that leads to 40 out of 9, or 4.4 wounds. This is a staggering change from the 1.5 that we had against units with reasonable armor saves to units which don't have armor saves. You're getting almost 3 times the effectiveness, which is absolutely fantastic. So I really have to recommend the Immortals with the Gauss going up against mobs. That is definitely where they shine. Next we're going to look at the Deathmarks. So Deathmarks against basic Space Marines. A fairly interesting result here, actually. So we start off with the 10 shots, hitting on 3s and then wounding on 2s because this is the turn they arrive. Then we have to split this off between 4 out of 5 and 1 out of 5. So 4/5 of these shots are ones that will accept armor saves, so that's the 2 out of 6 factor, leading to 40 out of 27 or 1.5 wounds there. However, 1/5 of these, that's the wounds that you roll for, that's wounding on a 6, leads to a 10 out of 9 shots that just go straight through without the armor, and that leads to a further 1.1 wounds, or a total of 2.6 wounds for all of these shots, which is pretty impressive considering that's 1.1 more than the value that we had associated with the Immortals, which is very impressive. However, in subsequent turns, they won't have that bonus from Hunters of Hyperspace, so that means that they drop down to 14 over 9, or about 1.6 wounds per turn, which is about average if we compare that with the Immortals value of 1.5, so they're pretty much the same after the first turn in which they arrive. Then, if we look at their effectiveness versus Terminators, which is really where we expect them to shine, considering that they are designed to be elite killing units. So we have the 10 shots again, hitting on the same value. Again, we're hitting wounding on 2s because we're arriving from hyperspace. So let's look at the standard values. 4/5 of these shots receive the 2+ armor save, so only a 6 of them go through. That leads to 20 out of 27, or about 0.7 wounds immediately. Then we have the AP2 shots, so that's 1/5 of these. That's you rolling out a 6 to wound. And the Terminators will, of course, receive their 5+ invulnerable save. So that means that 4/6 of these shots will go through, leading to 20 out of 27, or about 0.7 wounds through from this. That leads to a total of 40 out of 27, which it averages to 1.5 wounds. I know if you're keen on the maths, you'll see that these don't add to 1.5, but of course that's because we have rounding errors here where these two have rounded down, and this has been rounded up very slightly. So we average to about 1.5 wounds. That's on the turn of arrival. However, after that you drop down quite staggeringly to 0.9 wounds, which is rather unfortunate, but that's just because of this drop from 5 out of 6, because you're wounding on 2s, all the way down to a 3 out of 6 because you're only wounding on 4 up after that. So that's a real shame that you drop down so much, but it does mean that during the first turn you can be happy because you're going to be doing your maximum effectiveness. So really, what should we take from this? Well, to start off, it's important to note that we didn't do the direct comparison of what the Immortals would do, except for with the Gauss. The reason for that is that I don't think it's worth evaluating what the Tesla Immortals could do, because really I think you should all be playing Gauss Immortals as far as you can. They are far better at taking out mobs, far better at taking out vehicles. So really the choice for you guys is between the Gauss Immortals and the Deathmarks. So versus Terminators, the Gauss Immortals are doing 0.7 on average, whereas the Deathmarks are doing 1.5. That's double, so you know, that's really what you want to be doing, plus afterwards obviously you drop down, but then they're likely to be taken out. It is unfortunate, but the Deathmarks do put on a lot of pressure, meaning that they will absorb a lot of firepower in the initial turn, and probably get wiped off the board. So you may be wondering at this point why I am even going through this at all. I mean, clearly they are completely different units designed for very different tasks. But, of course, you have to understand that these models are made from the same kits. So do you care about building your Immortals more than you care about building your Deathmarks? It's really up to you as a player and your playstyle, and if you have elite trashing units or not. Because the Deathmarks are clearly designed for elite unit killing, and although they're not as effective as some other points-heavier units, they are still very viable options. However, personally, I would rather build Immortals. That is very much a personal preference thing. Of course, your Deathmarks are, with the Deep Strike rule, will be able to come in and just snatch back some objectives late game, which could be very, very useful to you. However, because Deep Strike is such an inconsistent system, which is a rather irritating phrase to say, but of course it's there. I would rather just play Immortals. They're cheaper. I think they do the job that they're designed to do a little bit better than the Deathmarks do. Some people will argue with me over this. I mean, Deathmarks have received a lot of love from the community because they are a cheap elite killing unit. However, I am willing to put up the points to bust out my Praetorians for multiple reasons. Firstly, because I think they look slightly cooler. I've got to say the Deathmark units are an absolutely fantastic looking set of models that GW has produced. I have no complaints about them, but I do like the fluff and the look of Praetorian slightly better as an elite killing unit. Of course, if we were just going on looks, I would play Lich Guard every day, or even go back to Pariahs, but I suppose this is more of a tactical unit discussion. So, if you want to get the max play output out of the money that you spend on your units, I would say build the Immortals. Build the Immortals with the Gauss, because they are better at doing a job which they are designed for. They are better at objective holding, they are better at tank destroying, they are better at mob blasting. Of course, Deathmarks are better at killing stuff, like direct killing of infantry. Deathmarks are slightly better at that. However, the Immortals are far more versatile, and really, I think they epitomize what the Necrons are. They are shiny basic troops with a significant amount of killing power that just flays your enemies alive. So thanks for watching this video. Of course, feel free to disagree with me all you want by leaving a comment in the comment section down below. Tell me your views on these guys, or if you agree with me, you know, let me know. Give me a thumbs up, and as always, thank you guys for watching. If you want to suggest anything, just like Steven Silver did about this video, and if you want to give me any ideas of what you want to see from my channel in the future, then just let me know. And there's going to be a short update on that topic very soon. As always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.